Yes. Now, as you say, power.
Power.
You've had some very interesting relationships with key people in power.
Of course.
From Eric Williams to Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. Tell us, how is it? I remember seeing you with...
All right, coming out of my grandfather's experience, right, I grew up in a household that was not P&M. Definitely not.
Yes.
So I never met Eric Williams. People told me, and when I boast about that, say he's whoever he is, I never met him. And they would say to him, well, you should, because he's a very charming gentleman and he would charm you. Well, that didn't happen. My relationship with, I knew George Chambers a bit because he was a friend of one of my uncles, one of my father's brothers. But he and I were never kind of on the same page. And then came the Honorable Patrick Manning. And I always remember him as a very junior minister in Salvatore building, being very rude. And I remember one day, Faith Wilshire and I went to see him about some matter that was outstanding. And we had reason to leave his office and go downstairs and beat some pan and drums. And every time he'd see me after that, he'd say, use one of them women who was downstairs beating drum outside of my office. Yes, we had to beat the drum, so he wouldn't come out of there until he did what we asked him to do, and he was being very rude about, right? So he and I mean, we weren't angry with him or anything, it's just that he was not very helpful a lot of the time in respect of what was required. And then, of course, there was the question of him and the gender policy, which we will recall. After been struggling from 1988, we come to 2008, yes, no, 9, and we think we have a policy that is ready to be approved by the government, and it is the budget day, and in the text that is prepared for the budget, it includes the line that said that the national gender policy was to be approved, and we are sitting in the public gallery when he calls Joni Williams over to him and to tell her that on the basis of some 13-page letter that he had received from Anil Roberts' mother, that and I'm calling his name, her name, she's gone now, that he was going to withdraw that statement. And we saw him actually draw the pencil through the line on the paragraph. And all of our work had gone by a mere stroke of this man's pen. And we think people have to know that we had to know what we were prepared to do after that in respect of him. And you will always remember our baby doll character that says withdrawal is not a safe sex method. You cannot just withdraw.
Withdraw. It's not going to work.
It's not good.
And now tell me, just to bring us up to date.
Kamala.
Yes, how did you meet? And how long have you known her? I mean, it would seem
back in the 1980s. Remember,
I met her through you.
Right, I had joined the ONR, right, and then it came upon the time when the ONR was to be merged with these other into this alliance. I had very strong feeling about the alliance. In fact, the meeting of the ONR to make the decision about joining, I objected. Down in the back there was Brown Hannah. I didn't agree. But we went. It was the majority decision, so we went ahead. And Kamala was part of that environment. I think she was a local government councillor, or ran as a local government councillor. But she was part of the NER women's movement, which has dwindled. I actually went to a meeting they had a couple of weeks ago, with the support of Mr. Robinson. And I have to say again, he was always very approachable and helpful in respect of the demands of the women of the NER about what we wanted. So, for example, Trinidad and Tobago, again, was one of the first countries to sign on to CEDAW through him. And in fact, when he became the president and we were doing the 50-50 campaign, he was the first person we went to because of the relationship we had and the understanding that we knew that he understood what we as women in the NER wanted. And that was the era in which, in fact, the largest number of women were involved in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, and Kamala was part of that, right? So that was my relationship with her. Of course, I was always saying women had to take over the party. I remember we went to a party convention in San Fernando, for the elections. And we made up our own slate of women for all of the posts in the executive, and we actually got 50% of the seats, of the executive seats then, right? Because there was a very positive movement inside of the NER. I had no relationship with the UNC except insofar as they were willing to support some of our funding for training of preparation of women for political office, and Sadiq Bash is the one who was really, and Fazal Karim as well. That's his name? Yes. Were men in the UNC who were willing to support the women's agenda. Of course, when Kamala decided that she was going to run for the party leadership, which as far as I was concerned, was the critical step that had to be made if women were to advance in relation to politics, to challenge Basdeo Pandey and take that party seat. Otherwise, how can you be the prime minister except you challenge the party? And of course, for me, I have great satisfaction to see that in all of the parties in Trinidad and Tobago now, women are challenging for the political leadership, because that's the way you have to go. And we all have to support her. Of course, the same question comes up when you put them inside of there, what happens next? Well, I have a story that is different from other people. I say, you drop some women into a male environment, you don't just leave them and hope they can survive. They require your ongoing support, whether you agree or not. That's my position. Because without that support, they cannot do it. She functions in a hostile environment, whether she doesn't always agree that it's hostile, but we know that it is hostile. And I see that as my role of supporting the women who want to engage in politics, regardless of which party, because I believe that they can make a difference if they have our support.